welcome back to Tea Talk. We've changed our setting a little bit. You see we're sitting down at our table that is very much paint stained, but because we have an artist in our house. But Gunilla and I are sitting here. Gunilla does our R&D, research and development, which means kind of like working on new blends, and that's actually going to be the topic of one of the topics of our conversation. And I'm Heather, and I'm one of the owners of Lake Missoula Tea Company. So my husband Jake and I own the company. We wanted to give you guys, we thought that we're going to start running Q&As occasionally, and we thought a good way to start the process would be give a background on how the tea company came to be, and then how we develop these things that we're calling great blends. So, boy, we started this in 2012, which time goes really fast. And so we had the idea, this idea developed from a friend of ours. We have a friend that owns a tea company in Tacoma, Washington, called the Mad Hat Tea Company, Tobin Ropes. He's a character, but he's also a rugby mate of my husband's. And he stayed the night with us one night because he was reffing at a tournament, a rugby tournament. And he left us some tea, and he left us a steeper. And that sat on our counter for probably about 6 months. Nobody even thought anything about it. And one day I made it. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is really different. This is not what I thought tea was. And I have to tell you that growing up, I grew up in Montana. I grew up in the Bitterroot. I'm from here. This is Missoula, Montana. I grew up thinking that peppermint was tea. Well, I can tell you that peppermint is not tea. It literally is not tea. Tea comes from one plant, but I didn't know that, and having that really aha moment was really exciting. Our oldest daughter, went to school in Tacoma at the University of Puget Sound, and we had the opportunity to go and visit Tobin's tea shop several times, and then realize this is what we want to do. And we started up our tea shop now is in the Masonic Temple downstairs, street level, but we started upstairs in a very small room. And it was just, the idea was, let's see if people even walk up the stairs to come and have some of this tea. Let's see if they're even interested. And in a really short amount of time, we found out that they were interested. So we had the opportunity to move downstairs, street front. When a shop down there moved out, we took it over, and we've been in there for, at this point, 10 and a half years. And it just makes me feel so good. I think it makes all of our employees feel so good to see how much our community really loves our tea. Yeah. It's exciting. I'm gonna let Gunilla talk a little bit about how the tea process happens. And this, just so you know, this has been going on all along. So 12 years, we've had some blends for 12 years, but there's these things that go on throughout in the background, and she's going to talk a little bit about that development and what happens behind the scenes.
Yeah, so we try to have a wide variety, of course, and once in a while we find that we can't offer a certain taste or a certain interest to people, and then we think about making up a new blend. And it's always interesting to narrow down, is it going to be a black tea, is it going to be something without caffeine, is it going to be botanical, or
if we had black tea, so we have our regular black teas, our single origin, and our breakfast blends, but if all of our blended flavored teas were all fruity, yeah, it would just it wouldn't be as interesting. Right.
Yeah. So finding what's missing and what holes we still have to fill to satisfy all tastes. We find, and then with the flavoring process, or finding what flavors go well together, the raw ingredients, all the teas and all
the fruits and the flowers, the
herbs that we add to it. Does hibiscus go well with this green tea, or does it make it taste awful? It's a long process, and lots of narrowing down and tasting, and it's a tedious process sometimes. But
I'm trying to think of a tea that we work on, or that was a process in the making, and I'm thinking of maybe the Bodacious Blue.
That is still in the making.
Right, so the Bodacious Blue is a very popular tea, And we ended up using butterfly pea flowers, and we could have said, oh, let's just make this a caffeine free and left it as a botanical. But we made the decision to include some black tea, a little caffeine, because all true tea has caffeine in it. And so it all of a sudden changed, because now it's not a botanical anymore. We're now marketing it as a black tea, as a black blend, right?
But it's important to find, I call them high and low notes.
Sure.
If you have a tea with all high notes, it's not gonna taste good. There gotta be a balance of like a carrier kind of that you can build on. So it's hard to find all the right components sometimes.
Well, like Gunilla's talking about the kind of the low note. Well, we're drinking the tropical fruit green right now. It's an oolong. It's actually a rolled leaf oolong. You can see that.
It's a tea Kuan Yin.
I'm sorry, the tea Kuan Yin. I'm sorry, the tea Kuan Yin, roasted tea Kuan Yin. And we have it brewing here, but it has low notes, you know, and it's got a lot of complexity. So this is a really good tea for us. This particular tea Kuan Yin is really good for us to use as a base to get that low note. And for example, doing like the peach peridot.
Yeah.
So the peach peridot is using this tea as a base, and then we're bringing in the high peach notes. So it's kind of giving what Gunilla's talking about is this well-rounded,
the whole full picture kind of.
Another really good example of what she's getting at is, I'm going to say like 8 years ago, I said, we need to come up with a way to market our purple tea more. And our purple tea comes from Kenya. And I said to Gunilla, I actually just said, you know, can work on something in the background. And so she had a clean slate. I didn't give her any other direction. And I didn't say, let's try to do this, let's try to do that. And can you tell us about the process of how we arrived at the Rift Valley current?
So I'm from Denmark, and I grew up with black currant tea. And that's a black tea with blackcurrant flavor. And that's what my big brother, he loved, and he brewed it every day almost. His friends would come over and he would serve tea.
That's cool.
So, and I miss blackcurrant flavor over here. It's non-existent almost. So I of course jumped on it and wanted to make a blackcurrant tea. But it was hard. It was really hard to find like the right ingredients to make it pop and to make it sweet and to make it soft and tart at the same time. So
I would say that Americans don't actually know what a black currant tastes like, because black currants were actually deemed illegal. Let's say 100 years ago. I'm not exact on that, but they made it illegal in the United States because they thought that, or they didn't think, but because they the bush carried a rust, and that rust would get onto other trees, and they didn't running crops of trees. For logging, etc. And it since has been allowed to be farmed now and come back in as an agricultural product. And we are able to source it now. But that when you go into other tea companies and you say, can I have a black currant tea? It's going to be really sweet and fruity. And as Gunilla just hinted at, it's not actually sweet and fruity. It has elements of sweet and fruit, but it's actually kind of a dry, kind of a musty flavor. Very distinctly black currant, and I get why you would miss that. That's a really great blend that you came up with, and you did that on your own. And it's got that high and that low, and it actually brews purple. So it's just very distinctly Lake Missoula Tea Company. And I would say that the addition of the black currant in several of our blends really is kind of a custom signature of our blends. So when you're looking at Lake Missoula Tea Company, there's reasons why our blends taste a certain way and another company might have another kind of approach. But our approach is this, and we're coming at it from this background, and we have a really great team of people that we work with. We have about 17 people that work with us, and everybody kind of brings in their own gifts, but I would say that we're in our 12th year, and Gunilla's been with us going on 6 years, I believe, and that's really contributed to the flavor of our tea. We're sourcing a tea from a company in California. This was a long time ago. That company went under, so I literally went to go order tea from them and never heard from them again. And we had wholesale accounts that were dependent on a couple of these teas. And I had to go to Gunilla and say, Gunilla, we need to make this. It was our Willy Wonka.
That was before I even blended or made the blends. That was like one of my first blends you threw at me.
Right, and I'm like, we need this now.
Yeah, you had to go at it, and we couldn't really figure out how to make that flavor that is so specific.
It's very unique. It's very particular, right? And so Gunilla kind of described the angle you took on it, because if I had asked somebody else, it would have ended up differently. But because of your unique background and whatever, you took a particular...
it tasted just like a Danish candy I grew up with. And I happened to go to Denmark that summer, and I brought some home. And I studied the ingredients and kind of tried to figure out why that candy ended up tasting like it does, and then I applied that same thinking to the Willy Wonka and added this ingredient that we wouldn't have thought of in a million years to add.
Right, yeah.
And it just nailed it.
It just really hit it on the head, and you're not going to find that anywhere else. This is basically, it's a chocolate cardamom black tea. And it's another custom blend of ours that really, we were in a panic, and then we figured it out. And I have to say, like, when we first started, we were sourcing tea from different companies, and then we quickly realized, the way that this makes it interesting and how we're going to like be our own is we're going to do our own teas. And so that was a transition into doing our own teas, and that company going under really forced our hand. It kickstarted and said, you guys got to figure this out. And I think we had something, and it made it even better. So that's a really great tea. It's called the Willy Wonka chocolate cardamom black tea. It's awesome. It's a fun process. It can be stressful. It can be exciting. It's a lot of things. We're not always in the mood to be creative, and sometimes we're really creative. So we're dealing with all of that all the time.
I kind of view it as cooking.
Oh,
I
sure.
love to cook, and sometimes I love trying new things and being creative, and sometimes I just have to make dinner ready for my kids.
I know that feeling. What's for dinner? I have no idea.
I don't know, but
You
I'll figure something out.
We will be eating in an hour. All right, if you have any questions, give us some so we can talk more about them and address what you're curious about. And we really appreciate you watching. Like us, follow us on Instagram, and try to learn more about our teas. We're really happy that you're interested. Have a good rest of your week. Thank you.